Okay, we're going to talk about two more properties of exponents today, and the first one is the negative exponents and what it is that they do. So what a negative exponent does is when you have a base that has a negative exponent, what you end up doing is taking the reciprocal of the base and raising it to the corresponding power. Now, the key word here is reciprocal. That's what is really important. Secondly, what a negative exponent does not do, it does not make your base negative, nor does it give you a negative answer. So this is kind of weird right here. It printed out funny. But if I have a number a and I raise it to the negative m power, what that is going to give me is the reciprocal, which is 1 over, sorry about that, 1 over a to the mth power. So if I had something like 2 to the negative third, that would equal 1 over 2 to the third, which would give me 1 over 8. Similarly, if I had something like 1 over 3 to the negative second, that would flip it. Basically, if it's negative, it's going to move it to the opposite. So right now it's in the bottom. A negative is going to move it to the top. I would have positive 3 squared over 1, but I don't need to write it, and that's going to equal 9. Okay? So let's look at a couple of examples here. This one is a fraction. Let's not worry about that. So if I have 10 to the negative 2 to the third, this is power of a power, so I am going to need to multiply those. So when I do that, I get 10 to the negative sixth. And because this is a negative, this is going to become the reciprocal. It's going to move it down to the bottom. 10 to the positive sixth, which is a 1 with 6 zeros. 1/1,000,000th would be the answer to that. Now this one, the negative 1 power of this entire fraction is going to take the reciprocal. Right now it's 11 to the 5th over 11 to the 8th. It's going to flip to be 11 to the 8th over 11 to the 5th. And then we can simplify that even further by subtracting the exponents, and we get 11 to the 3rd. If you wanted to multiply that out, that's 1331. Okay, it's always going to move it. Either if it's in the top, it moves to the bottom. If it's in the bottom, it moves to the top. Here are some examples algebraically. Because this entire quantity is in parentheses, that entire thing is going to move to the bottom. So I get 1 over x to the third, y to the second. And that would be it. For example B, remember I can only multiply x's with x's and y's with y's. Since we're multiplying, we're going to add the exponents. So I would get x to the ninth, and then negative 2 plus negative 1 would give me y to the negative third. Now here's where you have to be careful because this one is different from the previous example. Here this negative 1 moved everything. That's because all of this was in parentheses, making this entire quantity the base of this exponent. Here it is only the y that is being raised to the negative third power. So that is the only thing that is going to move. The x to the ninth will stay in the top where it is. The y to the third is what's going to move down. All right. Example C, you have a couple different options here. We could give everything this exponent first, or I could flip it first. It really doesn't matter. I would rather do this because some of my negative exponents might end up canceling out. So I get 5 to the negative third, x to the positive 6, negative times a negative, and y to the negative 12th. Now, two of these have negative exponents, so this and this are both going to have to move. Notice the x to the 6th will not. It will stay in the top. So x to the 6th over 5 to the third is 125, and then I have y to the 12th. Okay. Lastly, with D, again, we have here 2 over 6 reduces to 1 over 3. X to the third divided by x gives me x squared, and this is a y to the first. Remember that 1 minus negative 1 is actually 2, so I'm going to get y to the positive second. And on this one, we didn't end up having to worry about moving anything. So those are negative exponents. Here are some examples using algebra, where I have a little bit more going on. These were some of the questions from the homework last night. When you multiply fractions, remember you're going to go straight across. You can either divide first and then multiply, or multiply first and then divide. That's what I prefer to do. So if we multiply straight across, there's nothing to go with this x squared. Negative 3 plus 2 gives me y to the negative 1. Notice I'm not moving anything yet. Then I just have 3 times 1, so that's just 3. And there's nothing to go with this one or this one. Just a moment. So they will stay the same. Now we need to look at our exponents. 2 minus 4 gives me 2 minus negative 4 gives me x to the positive 6th. Negative 1 minus 2 gives me y to the negative 3 over 3. And then again, this y to the negative 3 has to move down to the bottom. So our final answer here would be x to the 6th over 3y to the 3rd. Lastly on this one, don't forget we have to do 2 squared and the x part squared. So I would get 4x to the negative 20th. Now, you have to be very careful on ones like this because this is where people make the most errors. Remember that this means 4 times x to the negative 20th. So again, just like on previous examples, it is only the x that has a negative power. The 4 will stay on the top and the x moves to the bottom. It would be different if this were 4x in parentheses. This is the case where I would move everything. Here I'm only going to move the x because these are not united as one base as this one is because it's in parentheses. Okie dokie. 0 exponents. This is the last one. This is just a rule to memorize. When anything is raised to the 0 power, the value of that power is 1. It does not matter what it is, it's always going to be 1. And sort of a quick explanation of why that is, let's say that I have 2 to the 5th over 2 to the 5th. Well, we know that anything divided by itself is 1. But we also know that the rule says to subtract the exponents. So I also get 2 to the 0. By the transitive property, that shows that 2 to the 0 must be 1, and that's true for every single value. So if we look at these examples here, anything to the 0 power is going to be 1, 1, this is to the 0 power. Negative 1/5 to the 0 power is also 1, but here's a weird one. We think that that should be 1. This is equal to negative 1. And what is so different about this one? Remember that negative 4 in parentheses, that would give me positive 1. But remember that this means negative 1 times 4 to the 0. The parentheses make a huge, huge difference. Okay. Now, how does that 0 power factor in when we're working out problems? It basically cancels. This is just a 1, so it's not going to affect my problem. Now I'm going to add these, and I get x to the 1st. I know we don't know what to do with fractions, but if I add 1/2 plus negative 1/2, I'm going to get x to the 0. You should never leave a 0 power as your answer because we know better. That is equal to 1. Okay. Here, my x to the 4ths cancel out. I get y to the 10th, that's 5 minus negative 5, over 6, because that's what 4 over 24 reduces to. This x to the 0 would be 1, so this would give me 1/4. And then here, again, it's only the x that has the 0 power. That 5 does not go away. So I'm going to multiply the parts. 3 times 5 is 15. X squared, there's no other x's, so I'm going to keep it. Y to the 3rd times y to the negative 3rd is going to give me y to the 0, and z to the 4th times z to the 3rd gives me z to the 7th. Then again, I have this guy, So our final answer would be 15x squared z to the 7th. Okay, feel free to go back and rewatch any of these examples, and hopefully these kind of help you out as you get started on your assignment. Okay?